The first option we have under the Selection tab is choosing the entities that we would like PractiCAD to use when we go to run this automatic. Here you can see that its fitting is currently highlighted. However, if we click on this bar, you're going to get a drop-down menu of every entity in the software. We can either scroll down to the entity we would like to use, or we can click on the bar, hit the first letter of the entity we want to jump to. In this particular case, we're going to hit T for tag, and now PractiCAD will go to the options for tags. You will notice that the options for tags, fittings, and all other entities are different, so there'll be separate tutorials on each type. To start, we're going to go over the options for fittings. Fitting options happen to be the most commonly used. All the parameters you see here, from interactive selection to current selection, are usually the first criteria in each automatic you will design. So we're going to cover these first. The first option we're going to go over is the interactive selection. Whenever we choose interactive selection, PractiCAD will let us run the automatic first, which is usually started by pressing the OK button, and then it's going to ask us to choose our entities afterwards. This is different than current selection, which would be done in reverse. Here we would select our entities first and then run the automatic. What we're going to do is go to interactive selection. We're going to press OK. When we do that, you'll notice that in the command line it says, please select a fitting, and now we'd select the fitting we'd like to apply this automatic to. That's how interactive selection would work. The next option is going to be duck line all. If we go over here and we check duck line all, when we hit the OK button, PractiCAD's going to ask us to select a fitting. And the fitting we choose, PractiCAD's going to highlight all of the duck line associated or connected to that fitting. Here we're going to press OK. We're going to click on this fitting on the drawing. When we click on it, notice that it highlights the entire duck line just by clicking one fitting. So duck line all highlights the entire duck line based on whatever entity you click on. If we go to duck line from to, PractiCAD's going to ask us for 2 points, from point A to point B. Here we're going to press OK. It says please select a fitting. We click once. Then it says please select a fitting in the command line. Again, we now click twice. And here you can see that it only highlights the fittings between point A and point B. The next option is going to be to choose duck line forward. Duck line forward means we pick a point and PractiCAD will take that point and then run down the duck line forward. Here we're going to press OK. Now we're going to click on the second fitting on the line. PractiCAD will highlight it from this point forward. The reverse of that would be duck line backwards. Here what we're going to do is go to duck line backwards. We're going to press OK. We're going to be prompted to select a fitting. We're going to click on the elbow. This time it's going to run from the duck line backwards. Whenever we dictate forward and backwards, forward means from the in connector to the out connector, and backwards would be the reverse of that, from out connector to in connector. The next option is going to be all drawing. If we choose all drawing, PractiCAD is just going to highlight all of the selection criteria on the drawing. If we press OK here, because we've chosen fittings, all the fittings on the drawing will be highlighted. And the last option is current selection. Current selection is actually the most widely used selection criteria in all of the automatics, especially in the PractiCAD default data. Current selection allows us to isolate an area, and then you go to run an automatic and it chooses the entities in that area based on whatever you already have selected. So when you choose current selection, it means you should have already highlighted entities on the drawing, and then you go to run your automatic and it'll choose everything inside that window that meets the criteria of your selection automatic or any other automatic. So here what we're going to do is we're going to press OK, and it's only going to apply our selection criteria to the duck that was highlighted. The next choice to choose for your selection criteria is whether or not you'd like to run an automatic to select the duck line with its branches, the duck line only or main trunk line only without branches, or just the branches themselves. These options are not always applicable. For example, if you click on current selection, you'll notice that it's currently grayed out. Current selection means we would have already highlighted the fittings or entities on the drawing we wanted to apply the automatic to. Therefore, we don't need to pick any additional criteria. However, if we go to choose a selection criteria like select duck line forward, PractiCAD gives you the option to choose the duck line forward with its branches, the duck line only, or branches only. Here we're going to run duck line with branches. We're going to press OK. We're going to be prompted to select a fitting. When we select a fitting, it runs down the main trunk line and also highlights the branches as well. Next, we're going to run just duct line only. We're just going to change the option from line with branches to duct line only, and this should highlight just the main trunk line. We're going to press OK. We're prompted to select a fitting. Here you can see that PractiCAD will only highlight the main trunk line. And last, we're going to do the reverse. Instead of highlighting the main trunk line, we're going to say just highlight the branches. So here we would choose branches only. Now if we run the automatic, we click on the first fitting, the branches are highlighted, but the main trunk line stays the same. So we can choose between these three options when running duct line selection autos. The Select from Cross-Section option allows us to highlight entities on our main drawing by selecting the entity's cross-section. For example, here on the drawing we've got a cross-section taken and put off to the right. If this was a busy drawing and I'd like to isolate the entities associated with this cross-section, I could click on the cross-section, which is always highlighted as one entity in PractiCAD. I can come into my Selection Auto button and I can choose to highlight an entity. In this particular case, it will be the fittings without tags. And we're going to say the current selection, but select from cross-section. So what that means is highlight the fittings on the drawing based on the currently selected cross-section. When I press OK, you can see that PractiCAD highlights all the fittings that were associated to this particular cross-section. So it's a quick way of getting a hold of entities on the main drawing that we took cross-sections of. This feature is also used during auto-tagging automatics. The last section under the Selection tab is to choose your advanced conditions for selecting fittings on duct lines. Currently, what we've had it on in all the tutorial thus far is we have been running a duct line forward automatic. We have duct line with branches checked, and we've always had the always button checked. This option, when checked, means select all the fittings on the line at all times. However, we can also choose the option when there is a change in. This option allows us to select fittings on the duct line only when specific changes happen. Currently, we have four options: size, direction, elevation, and top-bottom. Underneath these particular options, we also have the ability to choose previous fitting, selected fitting, or next fitting. To start demonstrating, we're going to say, let's select fittings on the duct line forward. We want to do the duct line with branches, but instead of using always, we're going to say only highlight the fittings when there's a change in, and we're going to select size. Now notice here we're going to say only select the selected fittings. What this means is when there's a change in size at that specific fitting or the selected fitting, the point at which the size change happens, that fitting and that fitting only should be highlighted on this duct line. So we're going to press OK. PractiCAD says highlight the duct line forward. And here you can see before we click on the first piece, we've got a duct line with a transition. We have an elbow, and then we have a duct line turning up. And we're going to click on the beginning of the duct line, and PractiCAD is only highlighting places where there's a change in size. You can see that the transition, there's a change in size. You can see there's a change in size at the boot tap because the boot tap happens to be a smaller segment of this branch. The last section under the Selection tab is choosing the difference between the Always option and when there is a change in. Thus far, the entire tutorial, we've been utilizing the feature Always. What that means is if we choose a selection criteria like duct line forward, and we've done it for fittings, we want to select the fittings on that line always, regardless of any change the duct line might make. However, we have advanced options where we can select fittings on a particular duct line when there's a change of a specific type. In order to do that, we're going to select the option when there is a change in. When we do that, we get to choose between 4 different types of changes currently. We have size, direction, elevation, and top bottom. Underneath that category, we also have the ability to choose between previous fitting, selected fitting, or next fitting. First, we're going to say, let's highlight a duct line forward, but only highlight the fittings on the duct line where there is a change in size. And what we're going to do is choose the option selected. Selected means the fitting at which the size change happens. Previous or next would be select the fitting before the size change or select the fitting after the size change. We're going to run this automatic once using size and selected. We're going to press OK. PractiCAD is going to ask us to select a fitting at the beginning of the duct line. We're saying duct line forward. Here you can see the duct line consists of a transition, we have a boot tap, we have a drop cheek elbow, and then we have a duct line running up as notated on the right hand side. We're going to select duct line forward now. When we do that, notice that the only fittings highlighted are fittings where change sizes happen. For example, the transition, we have a change of size at the boot tap because the branch got smaller. This is a drop cheek elbow. The depth has been shortened after the elbow, so this is where a size break happens. And you can also see that we have an elbow on the right, and because the depth has switched on this elbow, we went from what was around a 36 by 18 to about a 30 by 30 on the out. We've also highlighted the elbow, and because we've chosen the option selected, PractiCAD has highlighted only the point at which the change happened. So each fitting that causes a size change has been selected. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the selection tab. This time we're going to say, let's not do change in size. Let's do change in direction. This time we're going to say change in direction, and we're going to run selected. We're going to press OK. We click on the beginning of the duct line. Now you'll notice that the only places that cause changes in direction in this particular case is going to be at the elbows. So you can see that only the elbows on the duct line. We have chosen selected fittings. So what that means is at the fitting that the direction change happens, we should highlight it. So currently we only have 2 elbows. However, we're going to change the exact same selection auto to do previous and next. Here we're going to say, let's do previous, uncheck selected, and do next. What that means is let's go to where the direction change happens, but instead of highlighting the fitting at the direction change or the selected fitting, highlight the fitting before and after. Notice you can have more than one checked at a time. We're going to press OK. We're going to select the beginning of the duct line. Now notice that PractiCAD highlights the fittings before and after the direction change. So on the isometric view, you can see it's the fitting before this elbow and after this elbow. And then it's going to be the fitting before and after this elbow. So this is how we can use a combination of changes plus choosing between previous, selected, and next. Now we're going to run over the option for elevation changes. Here we're going to say run when there's a change in elevation. And this time we're going to choose selected fitting again. We're going to uncheck previous and next. We're going to press OK, and now we're going to click on the beginning of the duct line. Now notice that PractiCAD is going to highlight the transition because there's been a change. The transition is actually dipping down as notated by the elevation tags here. And then we're going to have an elevation change at the elbow. The elbow is drop cheek, so though the bottom is the same, you can see there's a change in the top elevation. Here it's 11 foot before the elbow. Here it's 10 foot 8 after the elbow. And you can see in the isometric view that we go up into a riser. And right here you can see that each one of these fittings has a change in elevation because they're vertical. Therefore, each fitting was highlighted during that selection auto. Now what we're going to do is run the last scenario we have currently. That is top bottom. If we choose this, it doesn't apply specifically to elevation changes. It's only going to apply specifically to fittings that will have a change in top or bottom. So if we press OK and then we choose the beginning of this duct line, you'll notice that it highlights the transition and elbows because they both have top changes and bottom changes. And you'll also notice that PractiCAD currently will also highlight regular elbows if in fact they're turned in a direction going up or down. So top bottom will usually be fittings that have the top, bottom, center change, offset center change parameters, or if the elbows turn up and down. Here you'll see that the rectangular duct was not highlighted. There are no top bottom changes for the rectangular duct, and most importantly, the fitting itself starts in a different elevation as opposed to the elbow here, which comes at one elevation and finishes off at another. So there's a slight difference between those two options. Most of the time you can choose either one and it would work just fine. So that'll conclude the selection tab parameters.